I can't tell you how excited and honored I am to be here today. My name is Lisa Shpritz. I'm with Bank of America, and in my role with the Global Environmental Group, I'm responsible for tracking and reporting on and reducing environmental impacts from our operations. So in that role, and also as a member of the USGBC Board of Directors, I've really been able to learn a lot about how important it is that we address resilience in our facilities in particular. I know that a lot of companies, and is a big reason why you guys are here, are working on the same thing, and this is an issue of utmost importance at this time. At Bank of America, we're very, very proud of the work that we've done related to environmental performance reporting and disclosure. And so we always talk about that which gets measured gets managed, which I'm sure a lot of you also believe the same. Over the past 10 years, we've come a long way. We've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions almost 30% since 2004, and we've been included in the CDP Global 500 Climate Performance Leadership Index 4 years in a row. But that's not why we're here, and these are great accomplishments, but that's not all that's needed to protect and sustain our company and our economy in the face of climate change. As we know, business continuity and risk management processes have significantly improved in recent years, as have environmental management processes. But now's the time to bring them together in a meaningful and a powerful way, which is exactly what this report does. What makes this report important and why Bank of America helped to underwrite the work is that it's focused on highlighting the importance of collaboration between risk managers, environmental professionals, supply chain experts, facility managers, and senior executives. The work compiled by C2ES, which is a fantastically smart and unbiased organization, is helping us and other companies address issues like the one we're here to discuss today. And it's clear from the experiences you will hear about from the panel today and that are detailed in this report that climate change impacts we're facing are real, have a financial impact on business, and are important to document so that we may learn from them. We all certainly have more work to do in order to develop true business resilience to climate change impacts. But thanks to C2ES and the case study companies highlighted in this report, we are better equipped to have a meaningful conversation, one that brings us closer to identifying real solutions. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Ted Roosevelt. Ted is someone who brings an environmental perspective to his work in the business world and an international business perspective to his work as a conservationist. He believes that a strong environment and a strong economy go hand in hand. Ted is a managing director and in investment banking at Barclays here in New York, and he is chairman of the firm's Clean Tech Initiative, where he advises companies on the economic opportunities of clean technologies. He also serves as chairman of the board for the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome to the stage Ted Roosevelt.
Well, good afternoon, and I want to thank all of you for taking your time to join us today. I particularly want to thank Lisa for your kind words and Bank of America for generously sponsoring this event. While Bank of America may be a competitor of ours, I have to freely acknowledge that under the leadership of people like Lisa and their chairman, Chad Holliday, they are a clear leader on climate change and have done a lot more than just talking it. They've walked the walk. So it's a pleasure to have been introduced by you, Lisa. So thank you very much. Now, what better place than New York to be talking about and preparing for the impacts of climate change? Hurricane Sandy was a cruel reminder of how vulnerable we are. It washed away homes, shut down businesses, flooded our subways, and cut off power to hundreds of thousands. Many parts of the city are still recovering and will be for some time. I personally see this every day because the favorite subway that I would take from our home in Brooklyn Heights to Manhattan will be closed from now till October of 2014. Now, one result of Sandy is that we're now taking far more seriously our responsibility to safeguard New York against future climate risk. Mayor Bloomberg, who has been an exceptional mayor, has outlined a $20 billion plan to strengthen the resilience of the buildings and infrastructure throughout the city, and we'll need to work to make sure that our next mayor sees it through. So he's going to have to meet, the next mayor will have to meet a very high bar. But the impacts of climate change are being felt far beyond our city and our shores. As a banker, I understand Main Street's resentment that we got bailed out by the TARP bill. You know, I can understand that. Good taxpayers' money to make up for our mistakes. However, the systemic risk which is posed by climate change far exceeds the systemic risk by having banks that are too large to fail. Last year, for example, there were more than 800 major weather-related disasters worldwide, resulting in more than $130 billion in losses. Climate scientists tell us to expect more frequent and intense heat waves, higher sea levels, more severe droughts, wildfires, and downpours. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the main driver of climate change, is at a level that we haven't seen for 2 million years. And emissions keep rising as the world continues to rely on fossil fuels for 80% of its energy. These are serious challenges. They're the challenges that we're working to meet at C2ES. As many of you know, I hope, that we started this work 15 years ago as the Pew Center on Global Climate Change. As the Pew Center, and now as C2ES, we've come to be recognized in the United States and internationally as well as a pragmatic, independent voice for strong climate action. We are a source of solid information and first-rate analysis. We are deeply engaged in the policy debate in and outside of Washington. We routinely bring together stakeholders and policymakers to hammer out consensus solutions. C2ES is also an established leader in catalyzing constructive business engagement through our Business Environmental Leadership Council. Much of our work at C2ES is aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions while ensuring safe, reliable, and affordable energy for all. But policies will not be successful unless we're able to engage the business community in helping formulate and carry out those policies. Business needs to reduce emissions by being more energy efficient, helping innovate new technologies, and by investing in a low-carbon future. All of these will be necessary to avoid future climate impacts. But what we're focusing on this afternoon are the challenges that businesses face in coping with the climate impacts that we can't avoid because they're already here. Even as we push on the mitigation side of the climate change challenge, it's time to start paying closer attention to the impacts we are and will be facing and ways to reduce our climate risk by strengthening our climate resilience. Leading us in that conversation today will be Eileen Claussen, founder and president of C2ES. It has been my great good fortune to work closely with Eileen on these critical issues. She brings to this issue an innate pragmatism, a no-nonsense attitude, and a real insider's knowledge. She spent many years in senior government position posts at EPA, the State Department, and the National Security Council. Let's just say Eileen knows her stuff. So my thanks again to all of you for being with us today, and won't you please join me in welcoming Eileen.
Well, people have said lots of different things about me, but no one has ever said that I know my stuff. But anyway, thank you, Ted. I'm really excited that all of you are here to join with us today for a conversation about what companies are doing and should be doing to increase their resilience to the impacts of climate change. As Ted says, C2ES engages with the business community to try to address the linked challenges of providing clean, secure, and affordable energy for all, while also protecting the global climate. Many companies are trying to address the causes of climate change by reducing their emissions, becoming more energy efficient, investing in clean energy, and supporting policies to help us get to a low-carbon future. We need companies to be part of the solution as we strive to reduce the emissions that contribute to climate change. But we also have to face facts. And the fact is that climate change is not a far in the future possibility, but a right now reality. Climate change is here, and all of us, individuals, communities, governments, and businesses, need to figure out how to deal with it. You know, it's really quite interesting how much interest there now is in this subject. Our focus used to be exclusively on mitigation, reducing emissions, but increasingly there's a realization that we need to be more resilient to the changes in the climate that we can't avoid. This summer, the Department of Energy issued a report warning of the risks of extreme weather to our energy system and suggesting steps to reduce our vulnerability. And today, the Department of Energy is increasing another report on this topic with the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Housing and Urban Development on the role of combined heat and power systems in promoting resiliency in buildings. Resilience is definitely a hot topic as we begin to see the effects of climate change all around us. To talk about resilience today, I'm pleased to be joined by a great group of people who are on the front lines. Ken Daly from National Grid New York, Preston Chiaro from Rio Tinto, and Alan Cresco from the Hartford. In a few minutes, I'll ask each of them to join me up here, and we'll get into a discussion. But let me first lay a bit of foundation by highlighting some of the key findings of our recent report on the state of resiliency planning among the world's top companies. We wanted to know how companies are assessing their climate risks, what steps they're taking to reduce them, and what's standing in the way. So with support from Bank of America, and thank you, Lisa, we took a close look at a cross-section of global companies. We did a comprehensive review of what the S&P Global 100 companies are saying publicly about climate change and extreme weather risks. We conducted case studies to dig deeper, and we brought companies together to talk about their experiences trying to manage climate risks. And here is what we found. As Ted noted, climate change is playing a role in increasingly costly and disruptive weather events. Hurricane Sandy and the Midwest drought were the two most costly weather events last year, totaling more than $85 billion. In our review of S&P Global 100 companies, we found that nearly all, around 90%, identify extreme weather and climate change as current or future business risks. In fact, nearly 40% say they've already experienced impacts. So many companies are asking themselves whether they've entered a new normal and what steps they should take and when to build resilience to these increased risks. These companies are concerned about direct impacts such as extreme weather damaging facilities or disrupting power, and also indirect impacts such as higher prices for commodities or insurance. Companies also worry about risks they can't directly manage, those that are outside their fence line, but that can significantly affect the bottom line. As people in New York City knew all too well, extreme weather can keep employees from getting to work, disrupt transportation and communication systems, and threaten the availability of power and water supplies. Companies are learning firsthand that even when their own risk assessments take climate change into account, their operations can still be disrupted if their suppliers haven't taken the same steps. For example, devastating floods in Thailand in 2011 shut down auto assembly plants and electronic suppliers for major international companies. So what's been the response to these risks? We found that most of the largest global companies are using existing business continuity and emergency management plans, which, of course, is a natural first step. But only a few companies say they've used climate-specific forecasting tools to comprehensively assess how these risks are evolving and the potential business impacts. These companies are generally dependent on a key commodity or operate in high-risk locations. So while the vast majority of companies acknowledge risks from extreme weather and climate change, their actions so far to address the risks aren't going much beyond business as usual. And a key reason for this, which we'll talk about later, is the lack of localized data, tools, or models that link projected climate changes to impacts that directly apply to a company's operations. We found that a few leading companies are taking additional steps to build greater resilience to climate risks where there's a clear business case to do so, where they see opportunities to become more efficient, reduce costs, or provide greater value to customers. Generally speaking, these companies take a 4-step process. Step 1 is to build a common understanding across the company of the risks associated with extreme weather and climate change, based not on the past, but on what could change in the future. Step 2 is risk assessment, determining how changes in the likelihood or magnitude of extreme weather events could affect supplies, operations, facilities, employees, customers, and costs. Step 3 is to outline strategies to manage these risks and pursue potential opportunities. And finally, step 4 is to incorporate climate risks into ongoing risk management activities and update them as new information becomes available. So a few companies are taking extra steps to build greater resilience to climate risks. The Hartford began analyzing climate change as a material risk in the mid-2000s. Rio Tinto has brought in experts to brief senior executives on climate science and the potential business impacts. National Grid did an assessment after major floods in the United Kingdom and determined that 10% of its electricity substations should be elevated or rebuilt. But by and large, businesses are basing their response on a historical picture of past risks, a picture that is incomplete because climate change is rewriting our future. And that brings us to the final piece of our report, the obstacles to increased business resilience and what can be done to address them. Companies tell us that they need a go-to clearinghouse for reliable, up-to-date information and analytical tools. They need user-friendly, localized projections of climate change and tools or models that can link these projections to specific business impacts. Those in regulated sectors, such as water, electricity, and insurance, tell us they need regulators to be open to companies making the case for increased spending on resilience and for policies that encourage customer decisions about sufficient levels of risk mitigation. Companies also need governments to invest in strengthening the resilience of public infrastructure, such as roads and bridges. New York City is leading the way with the mayor's comprehensive plan to protect communities and critical infrastructure. Finally, we recommend voluntary public-private partnerships to bring together government and business expertise to develop and improve resilience planning. Companies have always had to navigate a changing business environment, but now they face a changing physical environment as climate change leads to more frequent and intense heat waves, higher sea levels, more severe droughts, wildfires, and downpours. For many businesses, climate impacts are already imposing real costs, and waiting to act could cost even more. So with that brief overview of our findings, I'd like to invite our speakers to the stage and get the conversation going.